And hopefully our Eglu chicken coop holds up. Sure do want to put them back there tomorrow. Even the quail cages are still standing. But it'll be interesting to see if this thing holds together, because next time I will leave the chickens in there if this thing can hold together through this storm, which is about the worst you can get. Alrighty. Still going. The fence on the other side is still going from what I can see. Chicken coop is still, looks like it's strong. Fucking nuts. It's getting close to 6 p.m. Just no let up. We're obviously on the back end of the storm. Winds out of the northish. But this is the worst yet. It's got to be 120 miles an hour. Just fucking crazy. Okay, and hello everybody, and here we are about a year later after the hurricane clip. Obviously the Eglu Omlet Coop held up. Might look a little rough right now, but we'll go over that. This is kind of a 1-year review. I actually started using this in August of 22, and I started off, I had 4 chicks I got from Tractor Supply. We have 2 hens, a year old, in here now. I'll talk some more about that. So obviously this was sturdy. It's well made. The coop and the cage came through fine. Now it obviously looks like I've done some modifications and some things, a little wear and tear, but as far as sturdiness, I mean, I think it's really well made. I really prefer this model also because it held up in the strong winds. I really don't think the models where you know, you have the ladder leading up to it where it's off the ground, I think that's not a good idea if you're in a hurricane zone and can get a hit, unless you're going to take it apart and stuff. So of course I had the chickens at that point were only about 5 or 6 weeks old, so I brought them inside, had them in a crate for the storm. You know, so unless, you know, if we got another direct hit, it would really depend on the strength of the storm to determine whether I would leave them in there. I would have them in the coop locked up. But yeah, I took them out. So, but the coop held up fine. There was absolutely no damage. All right. So let's go into some more details here about a 1-year review. I will have another video on some of the modifications that I've made and adjustments. I'll just do another video on that because I don't want this to be too long. I do prefer this model for another reason than the one that is off the ground. At least if you're for having chicks, like if you get chicks, you can get them outside and they can be in here since it's ground level. You don't have to worry about them getting up a ladder. You can get them out here after a few weeks, especially if it's in the summer here in Florida where it's really hot. You know, you can get them out of the brooder and into this. And I think this is a really good one for raising young chickens, and that's something I wouldn't really I really wouldn't want to use the other models as quickly as I could use this. So I think this is really good for that. Assembly, let's talk about that before we talk about other stuff. The assembly for these Eglu omelets, directions, is terrible in my opinion. It's not that hard to put together, but the problem is the directions, both the video directions I found and the directions that came with it, you know, the written directions, were just terrible. They were just way too vague, and they were confusing. So I ended up having to take apart things, you know, 2 or 3 times and put them back together when I discovered a mistake I made. It really isn't that difficult to put this together. It's just that the directions were terrible. I could have done it in a third of the time. It ended up taking me probably 4 or 5 hours total for the cage and the coop, when I could have easily done it within 2 hours. Another thing about the construction as far as a cage, you got these clips that comes with it, you know, and they kind of work, but I actually prefer zip ties. I think are way easier to use to put this together. And I used a lot of zip ties to reinforce things, and I don't even use the clips anymore if something goes bad. They send you extra clips, by the way, so you'll get extras, but I don't think they're as strong as I would like. So I like the zip ties. Are just way easier, and I think are stronger in the long run to use. The accessories that came with it, they're fine, they work. Like here's some of the feeders, waterers. I don't use them now because since I have an extension on here, it's hard to get in there to clean out food or water if it gets dirty, and so it's way easier to have hanging things in here that I can access more directly through the extra cage. You know, but they work. The one problem with them is rats or mice can get in here, and they can get into the food and poop and pee in it. I found that was a problem. The chickens would usually chase them away, but they could still get in. I would see that happening sometimes if the chickens are sound asleep in the coop. They'll get in and they'll make a mess and ruin your food. So that's part of the reason why I've been going to a hanging version, which I don't seem to have the same kind of problems with mice pooping in the food. They might still get in there, but they're not sitting on it, pooping and peeing in the food. It stays good quality. So that's why I'm not using those anymore. Plus the water gets, you know, grungy pretty quickly. So again, that's why I'm preferring these hanging waterers. But I'll get more into that on my next video on this. So yeah, the tarp that came with it, I had a tarp. You know, that lasted maybe 9 months before I'd replace it. So I just ordered these cheap green tarps, you know, way cheaper than the Eglu ones. No reason to get those. These work just fine too. The other accessory I got with it were the wheels, and there they are. They're not on here now, as you can see. I got them on there. I followed the directions, I thought, and I quickly found out they weren't actually attached to the coop like they're supposed to be. I don't know what I did wrong. I'd spent enough time on it. I did use the wheels. I was just able to rig it up where I could still roll it. It wasn't attached. I had to use some ropes to just make sure they were held in their proper place while I moved it. You know, and I moved the coop around. I used this coop without the addition for, you know, 6-7 months before I started experimenting with having additional room. And I was able to move it. It's a little heavier than I was hoping, because one of the reasons I got a coop like this is I wanted, if someone was watching the chickens while I was gone and I thought they needed to move the coop, I wanted it to be easy. I didn't feel comfortable with that situation. I just thought it was still asking a little bit too much for somebody to have to move the coop other than myself. So, you know, I wasn't, if you have see, part of it is the yard I'm using. Here's my yard. I move them all around. They're going to be moved today to this corner over here. But they move all around. My yard slopes to a canal down there. I don't usually take it down there very far. And it's a little bit of rough ground. You know, this is not a manicured lawn. If you have a flat manicured lawn, easy lawn, I think the wear and tear on it and moving it would be a little bit easier. But in my case, not so much. So the wheels I'm not using anymore, because what I've ended up doing, the cage gradually became unattached from the coop. I got to the point where just one piece was holding it, and I could still move it, but I just decided to sever the cage from the coop. I just cut off the last piece. Yeah, I could have fixed it. I could have tried to reverse engineer it, but it would have been a pain in the butt. I just didn't want to do it. And frankly, it's easier to move if the cage is not attached. So a little tip here, if you want to move this without wheels or even with wheels, take the door off. Take the door off. Oh, there's a chicken in there. And take the trays out. And the coop is extremely lightweight if you do that, and it's very easy to move it by itself. So what I do to move the chickens, I get them in the extra cage, close the door, move the extra cage, and then I move the Eglu cage and link it up, or get it ready to link up, do my thing. Then I move the coop, clean the coop out, replace some of the bedding underneath where they stand, and that's how I do it. And it's very lightweight, easy to do that way. Okay, let's talk about this is recommended for 4 chickens, and I will say if you want to have 4 chickens, I think it'll work just fine. I had 4 chickens in here for quite a while. One of them turned into a rooster. You know, I got them from Tractor Supply, and of course your chances of getting one that turns into a rooster are pretty high. And I had 4 in here, including a rooster, and I wasn't using the add-on cage for the first 6 months, 7 months really. And it worked just fine. There was room, things were working well. I was moving it every day though. I think that's important if you're gonna have 4 in here, move it every day. The rooster was doing his thing. I had to have a rooster collar on him because he got too loud. The rooster collar did work out quite well. I had to have them in the coop at night with the door shut just to keep him from being too noisy. The rooster collar with him inside the coop was enough to keep the noise where I couldn't even hear him at night. And you know, our bedroom's right over there. So that worked out. Then one day he just kicked the bucket. He came out like normal, looked normal. Roger was normal. And then an hour later he was just laying in there dead. So I don't know what happened. He had a heart attack or something. You know, that happens with roosters, I guess. I checked the collar. It was not too tight. It was just like how it should have been. There was room for him, so I don't know what happened. So that left me with 3 hens. Now I have 2 hens because when I separated this cage, I wasn't able to get, it wasn't close enough in here. Okay, and unfortunately that's why I put this piece of hardware cloth here. Sometimes I'll put a heavy object too. A raccoon apparently got in here, trapped one of the hens in the coop and killed it. That was just a few weeks ago. So now I'm down to 2 hens. Of course, plenty of room for 2. It was working out for 3. So unfortunately, you got to be really aware of that. This does do a good job of protecting the birds if you don't let something like that happen. You don't have to worry about predators really, as long as you have it properly constructed. You can see on the extra cage I put along the edge so nothing can dig under it, and that's worked out quite well. I haven't had any issues because I leave the door open at night, so I don't have to get up at the crack of dawn and let them out. Especially in this Florida heat in the summer, you don't want to leave them in here very long at all. It just gets too hot. So since Roger died, I've been leaving the coop door open all the time, so I don't have to get up crack of dawn. Makes things easier, and it's worked out, you know, just fine. So keep that in mind. So durability wise, yeah, as I've been moving this around for a year, like I said, things have gotten a little bit banged up. The cage gradually worked its way loose from the coop. That was a problem. You know, some of your attachments, these go bad. So you'll need extras or use zip ties, which I prefer anyway. So that's going to happen. You know, the bumpier your yard is, the more it's going to be like that. You know, I have a very bumpy yard because of how I do things here on the suburban homestead. So, you know, the wear and tear is going to be more in my situation than maybe some of you. It depends on just how flat and manicured your yard is. I do like this material. They say the wood ones attract mites and things in there, and you don't have to worry about this. The material, I just love the plastic. It's lightweight. I think it's durable. There's a little bit of sun damage on the top, as you can see. I mean, we are in Florida. You're going to get that even more here, but I really like the material. So if I were to recommend this again, and I might buy another coop because I might expand the flock here maybe in the spring, because I'd rather have more than 2 chickens. I do have quail, also Coturnix quail, but I would rather have more than 2 chickens. So my plan, if I do that, expand in the spring, is I will buy the coop separate. Because as far as I'm concerned, as far as recommendations, if you want to save money, this is not cheap, this setup I got. I'm glad I did, because it really made things easy for a while. I would just get the coop by itself and no accessories, and then I would buy this cheap add-on cage I got from Amazon. You know, you can get them from well under $100, and they work. The only thing I don't like is it's got a flat top, and you have to, you know, do what I'm doing to keep rain from pooling too badly on top. Other than that, It's been great. But you could use a cage like this, pair it with the coop, and then get your own. Like I said, I like the hanging ones better anyway. The hanging feeders and waterers are working. They just keep things cleaner, and again, keep mice and rats from peeing or pooping in the food when they get in there. The chickens will, you know, chase them away, obviously, but they sleep sometimes where they're out, and they keep trying to get in here. You know, when I had the rooster Roger, he would have definitely policed things probably better. But that's what I would recommend. That would save you a lot of money. I think the coop by itself was like $300 and some, and I would just get that next time. So if I get more chicks to raise up, I'm going to get a second coop, get another cage like that, raise them up. Maybe I could raise them up beside and integrate the flock, or keep them separate, I don't know. But you know, and I can certainly add on these cages and give them even more room than I do. So that would be my recommendations. If you want to save money, just buy the coop. Coop is great. I really like it, and there's nothing wrong with the cage. It works really well. It's really good. You know, but this is a much cheaper option as far as a cage. You can't hang the accessory feeder cups, waterers, on this cage. They will not fit, okay? Because you can see these are like vertical bars and these are more horizontal, so you can't get them to fit on there. So that's why buying those containers, the feeders and waterers, will not work. It's pointless to get those if you're going to get a cage like this to use. All right, so I think that's about all. All right, so that should about do it for today. I will do a follow-up video on the modifications I've done to this, because there's a lot of little things that I've done that I think are worth noting, and I'll just do that on a separate video and go over things, because I've about got things exactly the way I want, especially so that I can leave on little trips with my wife and we can do stuff, and then whoever's watching, maybe they're only here once a day, or they can only do something once a day, to keep the birds healthy and happy and easy for the person watching them, because that's the biggest thing. You don't want to be a slave to your chicken coop and your chickens and your animals. You want things to be as efficient as possible, where they can get by without you here checking on them, you know, 2-3 times a day, or somebody else who may not know that much about them. You want it to be as easy as possible for the people watching them. All right, so we'll see you later. Have a good day.